Lyra had always believed in strength, discipline, and the stories of her own people. On the planet Zarathus, a world of vast silver plains, jagged mountains, and towering crystal cities, warriors were the highest honor. Every child learned the art of combat from the earliest age. Lyra, the daughter of a respected warrior commander, had trained harder than anyone else in her class. She was fast, precise, and fearless, but one story had always seemed impossible. They called it the tale of the human warriors. In the libraries and halls of Zarathus, stories told of humans who were smaller and weaker than Zarathians, yet somehow had courage and skill that could overcome armies. They were said to travel between stars in fragile ships, face dangers unimaginable, and still triumph. Lyra had always scoffed. Legends, she muttered to herself as she practiced sword strikes in the training courtyard. Stories to scare children or inspire fools, humans? A myth. Even her mentor, Commander Vareth, had warned her. Do not underestimate what is unknown, Lyra, he had said once. Legends exist for a reason. Sometimes they are the truth we are not ready to believe. She had shrugged it off. Truth, she thought, was what her eyes could see and her strength could achieve. Legends were useless. That morning, the sky over Zarathus glowed with a pale blue, but something felt wrong. The usual peace of the crystal cities was shattered by alarms, shrieks that echoed through the towers and across the plains. Lyra ran toward the command center, her boots clanging against metal walkways. Her heart raced not with excitement, but with caution. Outside the city, scouts reported something terrifying. A fleet of strange alien ships had appeared beyond the horizon. They moved as one, sleek and dark, faster than anything the Zarathians had ever encountered. These were not mere raiders. They were a coordinated force, and they were heading straight for the heart of Zarathus. Commander Vareth met her at the command center, his face grim. Lyra, you will lead a reconnaissance team. We must understand what we face before the cities are attacked. Lyra nodded. Fear was there, but she hid it well. Fear was for those who could not act. Warriors acted. She assembled her team, 3 of the fastest and smartest scouts Zarathus could offer. Together they climbed into their swift skimmer ships ready to chase the horizon. As they approached the fleet, the enormity of the threat became clear. The ships were massive, black and angular, almost living in appearance. They emitted an energy field that interfered with their sensors. Lyra felt a chill she had never known. Her mind raced. These were not ordinary enemies. This was something beyond anything she had trained for. One of her team members, a young scout named Rin, spoke quietly. Commander, what are they? I've never seen anything like this. Lyra clenched her jaw. We do not know, but we will find out. She forced her voice to sound steady even as her heart pounded. The reconnaissance mission took them close enough to see the alien ship's details. Strange symbols glowed along the hulls. Some ships released smaller attack drones that scuttled across space like metallic insects. Lyra realized that this was not just a battle. They were facing a fleet that was alive in ways they could not understand. Suddenly, a bright light streaked across the sky. One of the smaller ships from the alien fleet had broken away and was approaching them at incredible speed. Lyra shouted orders, her hands moving over the controls. Evasive maneuvers! Do not engage. But it was too late. The alien ship fired a pulse that disabled their skimmer's engines. The team was forced to crash land on a nearby plateau, their ship smoking and damaged. Lyra and her team scrambled out, ready to defend themselves with their swords and blasters. They waited, tense and silent. The alien ship hovered, its shadow dark and immense against the blue sky. Lyra tightened her grip on her weapon. Prepare yourselves. We fight together. Then, from the strange craft, a figure emerged. Lyra's eyes widened. It was not like anything she had ever seen. The being was human, smaller, less muscular than Zarathians, yet moving with a confidence and calm that made her heart pound. The human's eyes were sharp, scanning the plateau, and their stance radiated discipline and courage. Lyra's first thought was disbelief. Could this really be a human? One of the legendary warriors her people had always doubted? The human raised their hand in a gesture of peace, then spoke in clear, strong words. I am Captain Jaren of Earth. I mean no harm to you. But your planet is in danger. Lyra felt her skepticism collide with reality. This was no ordinary visitor. There was a calm in Jaren's presence, a quiet authority that made her instinctively trust them, even as danger surrounded them. The alien drones advanced, firing energy bolts that scorched the ground. Lyra's team fought back bravely, but they were outmatched, and yet Jaren moved with astonishing speed and precision. With only a small energy blade and an advanced blaster, the human disabled drones one by one, each move calculated, efficient, and fearless. Lyra had never seen such skill. Her heart pounded both in fear and admiration. The legends, the stories, they were true. Humans could do what her people had thought impossible. After the skirmish, Jaren turned to Lyra. "Your people fight well," they said, "but this fleet is more than brute force can handle. I can help if you are willing to learn." Lyra hesitated. Her pride screamed to reject the idea. She was a Zerathian warrior, trained her whole life for battle. But looking at Jaren, seeing the calm bravery, she felt a flicker of understanding. Perhaps humans were not just strong. They had something else, something beyond muscle and technology. She nodded slowly. "Then we will fight together. But know this, we fight for Zerethis first. You follow our rules." Jaren smiled faintly. "Fair enough. I follow, but I also teach. If we survive, it will be together." As the sun dipped behind the jagged mountains, Lyra gazed out at the horizon where the alien fleet loomed. She felt a mixture of fear and determination. The stories she had laughed at as a child were no longer just tales. A human warrior stood before her, and together they might just have a chance. That night, as Lyra prepared for the battles to come, she thought about her life, her training, and her people. Nothing would ever be the same. The legends were real, and she was about to discover how extraordinary humans could be. The next days would test her courage, her beliefs, and the limits of what she thought possible. But Lyra knew one thing. The galaxy had changed forever, and she was standing at the beginning of something legendary. The first rays of Zerethis' twin suns cast long shadows over the plateau, where Lyra and her team had regrouped. The air was thick with tension. Scouts reported more alien drones approaching, and the massive fleet hovered just beyond the horizon, a dark promise of destruction. Lyra could feel the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. Her people's survival depended on her judgment, her courage, and now, unexpectedly, on a human warrior she had barely begun to understand. Captain Jaren, the human who had appeared like a figure out of myth, stood calmly at the edge of the plateau. His armor was simple but practical, and his energy blade shimmered faintly in the morning light. Despite his smaller stature compared to the towering Zerathians, there was something undeniable about him, a presence that demanded attention, a confidence that made fear shrink at its edges. Lyra watched him carefully, studying his movements as he checked his equipment. Every gesture was precise, economical. No wasted motion, no hesitation. It was as if he knew exactly what he needed to do, and how to survive in a situation where even the strongest Zerathian could falter. "Lyra," Jaren said, his voice calm but commanding, "we don't have much time. The drones are fast, but they are predictable. Watch me, follow my lead, and we might just gain the advantage." Lyra's pride bristled. "You expect me to follow your lead? I have led dozens of missions before you arrived." Jaren's expression did not change. "I do not doubt your skill. I only know that together our odds improve. You can continue to fight alone, but alone you will not survive." Her mouth opened, but no words came. His certainty was unnerving, yet strangely compelling. She finally nodded. "Fine, but we do this my way too." The team moved cautiously toward a narrow canyon that Jaren had identified as a strategic choke point. The alien drones swooped low, scanning for movement, their metallic forms gleaming under the suns. Lyra felt her pulse quicken. Every mission she had led before seemed simple compared to this. These drones were fast, deadly, and relentless. Jaren crouched behind a boulder, motioning for the team to spread out. "Aim carefully. Don't fire until you see an opening. They react to force, but not to strategy." Lyra glanced at him, skepticism still in her eyes. Strategy? Zerathians relied on strength and speed. Their warriors struck with precision, overwhelming enemies with sheer skill. But here was a human, moving differently, calculating, patient, thinking 2 steps ahead. The first drone appeared, gliding silently through the canyon. Lyra raised her blaster, ready to fire. But Jaren acted first, leaping into the open with astonishing speed, slashing with his energy blade. The drone sparked and crashed to the ground, disabled. The team froze in shock. That was impossible," muttered Rin. Jaren glanced at her, expression calm. Nothing is impossible when you anticipate movement and exploit weaknesses. Watch carefully. The next wave of drones arrived. Jaren moved like water, a blur of precise strikes. Lyra saw how he used the terrain, bouncing off rocks and walls, each motion purposeful. With his help, the team managed to disable several drones, suffering only minor injuries. Lyra felt her disbelief slipping. This was no ordinary warrior. The stories of human legends were real, and she was witnessing it firsthand. The idea of humans as myths crumbled with each move Jaren made. After the skirmish, they regrouped at the canyon's entrance. Lyra approached Jaren, her curiosity overcoming her pride. How can you move like that? How do you fight so efficiently? Jaren looked at her thoughtfully. It's training, yes, but also observation. You learn to read patterns, anticipate outcomes, and stay calm under pressure. Fear is the enemy of efficiency, Lyra frowned. Fear is part of battle. It sharpens the senses. Fear can sharpen, yes, but it can also blind, Jaren replied. The trick is to let it inform you, not control you. Lyra studied him, realizing that his words carried weight. Humans might be smaller and physically weaker than Zarathians, but their minds were sharp, adaptable, and unafraid of risk. They survived where brute strength might fail. As the day wore on, the team advanced cautiously toward the alien fleet's perimeter. Jaren led the way, analyzing every movement of the drones and enemy scouts. Lyra began to follow his guidance, noting patterns in their movements, learning how to anticipate attacks rather than react. By midday, they reached a ridge overlooking the main fleet. The scale was staggering. Hundreds of ships, massive and black, glinted ominously in the sunlight. Lyra felt a chill in her chest. Zarathis had never faced a force like this. Her warriors, skilled and fearless though they were, would struggle against an enemy of this magnitude. Jaren crouched beside her. This is bigger than we imagined, but it's not invincible. Every fleet, every army has weaknesses. You just need to find them. Lyra looked at him, admiration growing alongside her lingering skepticism. And you think humans can find what we cannot? He nodded. We think differently. That can be the difference between victory and destruction. The first major engagement came at dusk. Drones swarmed down from the fleet, testing the defenders' positions. Lyra's team engaged immediately, using everything they knew. But it was Jaren's interventions that turned the tide. He darted through the battlefield, dodging blasts, disabling drones with pinpoint accuracy, and directing the Zarathian warriors to exploit openings they would have ignored. Lyra found herself following his lead, coordinating her team in ways she had never tried before. His approach was unorthodox but effective. They won the skirmish with minimal losses, something that would have been impossible relying solely on Zarathian tactics. Afterward, the team rested, and Lyra finally allowed herself to speak honestly. I never thought humans were real. Not like this. Jaren smiled faintly. Legends are born when ordinary people do extraordinary things. You see, humans have always had courage, resourcefulness, and the will to survive. That is what made us legends in your stories. Lyra felt a spark of excitement, a thrill she had not experienced in years. The human warrior standing beside her was more than a fighter. He was a teacher, a strategist, and perhaps a bridge between two very different worlds. Night fell over the plateau, and the twin moons of Zarathis cast silver light over the camp. Lyra sat quietly, staring at the distant fleet. She had trained all her life to face danger, but the presence of Jaren made her realize that her old methods, no matter how skilled, might not be enough. She had to learn, adapt, and trust in something she had once dismissed as impossible. The legend of humans had arrived not in storybooks or whispers. It had arrived in the flesh, standing before her, calm and confident, ready to face a threat that even the bravest Zarathian warriors might falter against. Lyra's heart burned with a new determination. She would learn from this human warrior. She would fight alongside him. And she would prove that the courage of Zarathians, combined with the ingenuity of humans, could face even the most impossible odds. As she drifted into a restless sleep, she could hear Jaren quietly surveying the perimeter. A true warrior never rests fully in the presence of danger, but Lyra felt for the first time a glimmer of hope. Together they might survive the coming storm. The day after the first skirmish, Lyra woke before dawn. The twin suns of Zarathis had not yet risen, and the plateau was silent except for the low hum of the alien fleet far beyond the horizon. The events of the previous day lingered in her mind. the way Captain Jaren had moved, fought, and guided her team. She had always prided herself on being the fastest and most skilled among her peers, yet the human had shown a form of combat she had never imagined. Lyra pulled on her armor and checked her blade. She had made a decision. She would learn from him. She would not let her pride blind her. But learning would not be easy. Humans and Zerathians fought very differently. Strength, speed, and endurance were the heart of Zerathian combat, while humans relied on cleverness, timing, and unpredictability. Lyra wondered if she could truly adapt. Jaren was already waiting at the edge of the camp, stretching his arms and observing the distant alien fleet. "Morning," he said calmly, as if he had been expecting her. "We have a lot to cover today." Lyra approached, trying to mask her nervousness. "Where do we start?" "Where all battles start," Jaren replied. "With understanding. Understanding yourself, your environment, and your enemy." They began with training exercises unlike anything Lyra had practiced before. Jaren emphasized movement and awareness, teaching her to anticipate attacks rather than simply react. They worked on coordination, timing, and improvisation. He pushed her to move faster, to think differently, to see openings where she had once only seen danger. At first, Lyra struggled. Her body wanted to follow instinct, the way she had been trained for years, but her mind had to learn a new rhythm. She tripped, stumbled, and even failed a few maneuvers. Frustration built inside her, but Jaren remained patient, correcting her stance, showing her how to move with both strength and subtlety. "You are fast, but speed alone is not enough," he explained. "You must anticipate the enemy's next move and create opportunities rather than wait for them." Lyra nodded, breathing heavily. Slowly, she began to understand. The human way was not weaker, it was complementary. She could combine her Zerathian strength and skill with human ingenuity. The possibilities made her pulse race, but training was not only physical. Jaren introduced her to tactical thinking, something Zerathians rarely emphasized. He gave her simulations and scenarios, showing her how to outthink enemies far stronger or more numerous. He emphasized communication, strategy, and adapting on the fly. Lyra realized that battles were not won by strength alone. They were won by those who could think faster than their opponent. Their lessons were interrupted when a group of Zerathian soldiers arrived, sent by Commander Verith. They had heard of Lyra working with a human and were uneasy. Many warriors distrusted Jaren, seeing him as an outsider who had no place leading or teaching Zerathians. One of the soldiers, a burly warrior named Dravos, stepped forward. "Lyra, why are you listening to this human? We are the strongest warriors on Zarathus. We do not need outsiders to teach us how to fight." Lyra stood her ground. "He saved my team yesterday. He knows more about these alien ships and drones than anyone here. I will learn from him whether you approve or not." Dravos scowled. "I don't trust him." "He is different, too." "Human." Jaren stepped forward calmly. "I do not seek to replace your warriors. I only share what I have learned in my experience. You may choose to listen or not. The fleet does not care who teaches you, it will strike regardless." The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Lyra saw doubt in their eyes. Some of them wanted to fight alongside her and Jaren, while others were unwilling to accept human methods. It was a tension that could fracture their unity if left unchecked. Lyra took a deep breath. "We do not have time to quarrel," she said firmly. "The fleet will not wait for us to resolve our pride. If we want to survive, we must work together." Reluctantly, the soldiers agreed to observe the training. Over the next several hours, Jaren demonstrated techniques that combined human ingenuity with Zerathian strength. He showed how to move silently, strike unexpectedly, and use the terrain to their advantage. Lyra's team began to understand that these lessons were not a threat to their traditions. They were a way to enhance them. By midday, Lyra and Jaren organized a mock battle against the soldiers. Initially, the human and Lyra's team struggled. Their opponents were strong and skilled, as any Zerathian warrior should be. But Jaren encouraged them to adapt, to observe patterns, to anticipate the soldiers' moves. Slowly, the team began to gain the upper hand. Lyra felt a thrill she had never known, the excitement of discovering a new way to fight, one that combined the best of both worlds. During a break, Lyra and Jaren sat on a rocky ledge overlooking the distant horizon. The alien fleet still loomed, silent but menacing. "You are learning quickly," Jaren said. "Faster than I expected," Lyra smiled faintly. "Your methods, they work. but it is hard to change old habits. Change is never easy, he replied, but sometimes it is the difference between life and death. Lyra looked out at the horizon, feeling the weight of those words. She had always relied on strength and skill, yet now she realized that courage alone would not be enough. To protect her people, she would have to trust someone she barely knew, and embrace ways of fighting she had never imagined. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, scouts reported movement. Another wave of drones approached, faster and more numerous than before. Lyra's training would be tested immediately. Jaren and Lyra led the Zorathian soldiers to a narrow valley, where they could funnel the drones and reduce their numbers. Lyra's heart pounded as she prepared for the fight. The lessons of the day would decide if they survived. The drones attacked, but this time the defenders were ready. Lyra and her team moved with precision, combining speed, strength, and strategy. Jaren darted through the battlefield, disabling drones and giving orders that turned potential chaos into controlled action. Lyra marveled at how his mind worked, how he anticipated attacks, found weak points, and used every advantage. Even the skeptical soldiers began to see the value in human methods. Dravos, who had complained earlier, shouted instructions, coordinating with Lyra's team. Together, they created traps, ambushes, and diversions, slowing the drones and defeating them with minimal losses. After the battle, the soldiers looked at Jaren with new respect. Perhaps humans are not just legends, Dravos admitted quietly. Lyra smiled. They are real, and they can teach us things we could not learn on our own. Night fell and the group made camp on a ridge overlooking the fleet. The twin moons reflected off the metallic hulls of the distant alien ships, making them seem even more ominous. Lyra sat beside Jaren, thinking about the day. She felt a mixture of exhaustion, pride, and a strange excitement. For the first time, she realized that legends were not just stories. They were truths waiting to be discovered. Humans were not myths. They were warriors, teachers, and allies, and their courage and ingenuity could change the course of battles and history. Lyra looked at Jaren. Tomorrow we train again, she said. I want to learn more, not just for myself, but for my people. Jaren nodded. Good. There is much to cover and the fleet will not wait. But remember, Lyra, the greatest weapon is not a blade or a blaster. It is the mind that wields them. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the words sink in. She had always believed strength defined a warrior. Now she understood that courage, skill, and cleverness together created something far greater. She felt ready to face whatever the alien fleet might bring next. The stars twinkled above, silent witnesses to the growing bond between a Zorathian warrior and a human legend. Together, they were not just a team. They were a force that could change the fate of a world. And as Lyra drifted into sleep, she knew one truth above all. The arrival of humans had shifted the balance of the galaxy, and the legends she once dismissed would soon become the reality she could no longer ignore. The twin suns of Zarathus burned bright in the sky, casting long shadows across the crystal plains. Lyra stood on a ridge overlooking the alien fleet, her armor glinting in the light. The massive ships moved like a single organism, their dark hulls reflecting the sun's rays. The ground beneath her boots vibrated slightly, a reminder of the power that loomed over her world. Lyra's heart pounded, but she forced herself to breathe steadily. Today would be the greatest battle of her life. Today would decide whether her people survived or fell. Beside her, Captain Jaren adjusted his energy blade, his calm demeanor in stark contrast to the tension that gripped the Zorathians. Are you ready? He asked, his eyes scanning the fleet. Lyra nodded. As ready as I'll ever be. Commander Vareth arrived with the rest of the Zorathian warriors. The fleet is larger than we imagined, he said grimly. But we fight with everything we have. Lyra, Jaren, your plan? Jaren stepped forward, pointing to the terrain below. We funnel them into the valleys, he said. Use the narrow passages to limit their numbers. Set traps, ambush points, and decoys. We fight smarter, not just harder. Strength alone won't win this. Lyra glanced at him, admiration and trust shining in her eyes. The plan was risky, but she understood the logic. Humans think differently. They see patterns and possibilities that Zorathians often miss. If they followed this plan, they might stand a chance. The warriors moved into position, their movements silent but precise. Lyra led a squad to the first valley, where she oversaw the placement of energy traps and barriers. Jaren moved among the teams, adjusting strategies, predicting enemy movements and ensuring coordination. The Zarathian soldiers, once skeptical, now followed his guidance without question. As the sun reached its peak, the alien fleet advanced. Ships descended from the sky, their energy pulses lighting the plains. The first wave of drones broke off, heading toward the valleys. Lyra felt a surge of fear, but she clenched her blade and focused. Fear could be controlled. It could sharpen her senses if she let it. The battle began with a roar. Drones swarmed the valley, firing energy blasts that struck the ground with explosive force. Lyra's team moved like a well-oiled machine, guided by Jaren's commands. They dodged, counterattacked, and set traps that destroyed the enemy with precision. Lyra herself engaged in close combat with a drone. Its metallic limbs were fast, but she was faster. She slashed, ducked, and used her Zarathian strength to crush its core. Beside her, Jaren moved with grace and efficiency, dismantling drones with his energy blade and blaster. Every move was calculated, every strike purposeful. The battle raged for hours. The aliens adapted quickly, but so did Lyra and Jaren. They anticipated attacks, set traps, and used the terrain to their advantage. Lyra felt a strange exhilaration. She had never fought like this before, combining brute strength with strategy, instinct with intelligence. Amid the chaos, a massive alien ship descended into the valley, larger than any Lyra had seen. Its energy shields were strong, and it released a swarm of drones that threatened to overwhelm them. Lyra felt a pang of fear. This could be the end. Jaren quickly assessed the situation. "We need to split their forces," he shouted. "Lyra, take your team around the ridge. Draw half the drones toward the cliff. I'll handle the rest." Lyra hesitated for a moment. The plan was dangerous, but she trusted Jaren. "Understood," she said, signaling her squad to follow. They climbed the ridge, hearts pounding, and waited for the drones to pursue them. As predicted, the drones followed, and Lyra's team unleashed a series of energy traps that destroyed a significant portion of the swarm. The remaining drones crashed into the cliffs, falling to the plains below. Meanwhile, Jaren faced the massive alien ship head-on. Lyra watched from a distance as he moved with skill and precision, striking at weak points and dodging energy blasts. Even alone, he seemed unstoppable, a human warrior living up to the legends she had once dismissed. The Zarathian soldiers, inspired by his courage, rallied and attacked in coordination with Jaren. Together, they managed to disable the ship's shields, exposing its core. Lyra signaled her team to rejoin the battle, and together they struck the final blow. The massive ship exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves across the valley. For a moment, silence fell. Lyra's chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath. Around her, the Zarathians and Jaren's team looked at one another, realizing they had survived against overwhelming odds. But the battle was not over. More ships loomed on the horizon, larger and faster than the ones before. Lyra's mind raced. They could not survive another direct assault like this. They needed a new plan, something bold, something daring. Jaren approached, his expression calm despite the exhaustion. "We need to target the fleet's command ship," he said. "If we take out the brain, the rest will falter. But it's heavily guarded. It will require all of us working together." Lyra nodded. "Then we do it together." Over the next few hours, they prepared for the final assault. Traps were set, squads were assigned, and strategies were refined. Lyra could see the unity forming among the Zarathians, inspired by the human warrior who had proven his worth beyond legend. Even the skeptical soldiers had begun to trust him, recognizing the value of combining their strength with human ingenuity. As night fell, the fleet's command ship glowed ominously in the distance. Its energy shields pulsed like a heartbeat, and drones swarmed around it like a protective swarm. Lyra's stomach tightened. This was the moment of truth. Jaren placed a hand on her shoulder. "Remember what we practiced. Strength, strategy, and courage. We can do this. And no matter what happens, we fight together." Lyra felt a surge of determination. "Together," she agreed, gripping her blade. The assault began at first light. Lyra led her squad through the valleys, using traps and ambushes to reduce the enemy numbers. Jaren moved with deadly efficiency, striking at critical points and guiding the warriors. Commander Vareth coordinated the main force, ensuring that every movement was synchronized. The battle was intense. Drones attacked relentlessly, and energy blasts lit up the plains. Lyra felt exhaustion in her muscles, but adrenaline pushed her forward. She slashed, dodged, and countered, feeling the rhythm of the fight in her blood. Every move she made was sharper, faster, and more precise than before. Finally, they reached the command ship. It loomed above them, massive and imposing. Drones swarmed around it, but Lyra and her team pressed forward, following Jaren's plan. He identified a weak point in the ship's shield generator and led a strike team to disable it. Lyra followed closely, cutting down drones and protecting her allies. The generator fell and the command ship's shields flickered. Jaren signaled the main force to attack. Lyra and her squad charged, energy blades flashing, blasters firing. The command ship shuddered under the combined assault, sparks flying from exposed circuits. With one final coordinated strike, they breached the ship's core. Lyra watched as Jaren delivered the final blow, an energy blade slicing through the heart of the alien ship. A brilliant explosion lit the sky and the fleet faltered, drones losing coordination and crashing to the plains below. Silence fell over the battlefield. Lyra's chest heaved, her body trembling with exhaustion and exhilaration. Around her, the Zerethians and Jaren's team looked at one another in awe. They had survived. They had won. Lyra stepped beside Jaren, staring at the horizon where the remaining ships retreated. You were right, she said quietly. Strength alone would not have been enough. Your strategy, your courage, it made the difference. Jaren nodded, a faint smile on his face. We did it together. That is what matters. Lyra looked around at her people, the Zerathian warriors who had once doubted him, now standing proudly beside the human warrior. She realized that legends were not just stories, they were truths waiting to be proven. Humans were real, they were capable, and their courage could inspire even the strongest warriors. As the twin moons rose over the plains, Lyra felt a sense of hope she had never known. The fleet had been defeated, but the galaxy was vast and threats could come again. Yet she also knew that with courage, ingenuity, and unity, her people could face anything. For the first time, she believed in legends not as tales of old, but as living, breathing proof standing beside her on the battlefield. The plains of Zarathus were quiet now, though the echoes of battle still lingered. Smoke curled from scorched ground, and the distant horizon bore the remains of the alien fleet. The twin suns cast a golden glow over the shattered landscape, reflecting off the crystal towers and jagged mountains. Lyra stood at the edge of the valley, her armor scratched and scorched, her chest heaving from exhaustion. Yet she felt no fear, only a fierce, quiet pride. Beside her, Captain Jaren cleaned his energy blade, his calm presence a stark contrast to the chaos around them. His expression was unreadable, but Lyra sensed satisfaction. Together they had faced an impossible force and prevailed. Commander Vareth approached, his face serious but lined with relief. Lyra, Captain, you have done what many thought impossible. The fleet is retreating, scattered and broken. Zarathus stands. Lyra glanced at the battlefield. Debris littered the plains. Drones lay in ruined heaps, and the survivors of the Zerathian forces were tending to the wounded. Yet amidst the devastation there was triumph. Their courage, their strength, and their unity had won. Jaren placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. We fought together, he said simply. That is what made the difference. Never forget that. Lyra nodded, her mind replaying the battle in vivid detail. She remembered the first encounter with Jaren, the moment she had doubted humans and the lessons she had learned over days of training. He had taught her strategy, patience, and thinking beyond brute force. But more than that, he had shown her that courage was not bound by size, species, or tradition. Her thoughts were interrupted by a cheer from the Zerathian soldiers. Even the skeptics, those who had doubted the human warrior, now looked at him with respect and gratitude. Dravos, the burly warrior who had challenged her trust in Jaren, approached slowly, bowing his head in acknowledgement. You are not like the stories, he said, his voice rough but sincere. You are real. And you fought with honor. Jaren smiled faintly. Legends are made by those willing to act, not by those who only speak. Lyra watched the exchange, feeling a swell of pride. Her people had seen the truth for themselves. Humans were not myths. They were allies, warriors, and friends. She thought of all the stories she had grown up hearing, tales of bravery and courage. They were no longer just stories. They were reality. As the sun began to set, Lyra and Jaren walked through the battlefield together. The ground was uneven, marked by craters and scorch marks, but the air felt lighter than it had in days. Lyra observed her people helping each other, sharing supplies and tending to the wounded. Even in victory, they showed strength and compassion and unity. Jaren paused beside a damaged drone. He studied it for a moment, then turned to Lyra. "They will learn from this too," he said. "Their fleet may have failed, but their tactics, their technology, they will adapt. You have to be ready for what comes next." Lyra nodded. "We will be ready, but not alone. We have each other. And now we have humans to stand with us." They continued walking until they reached a ridge overlooking the distant plains. The twin moons rose, casting silver light over the shattered fleet. The horizon seemed endless, full of possibilities, dangers, and hope. Lyra took a deep breath. "I believed humans were only legends," she said softly. "But now I see. Legends can walk among us. They can fight beside us, and they can inspire us to become stronger than we ever imagined." Jaren looked at her, his expression unreadable but calm. "It is not just humans, Lyra. It is anyone willing to face fear, to fight with courage, and to think beyond what is expected. Legends exist in every world, in every species, in every heart willing to act." Lyra smiled, understanding. Courage, strength, and ingenuity were not limited to one race or one planet. They were universal. And today, those qualities had saved her world. The night was peaceful now, though the memory of battle lingered. Lyra sat beside Jaren, watching the stars glimmer above the plains. The sky was vast and full of unknown worlds, but she no longer felt small in its immensity. She felt part of something greater, a galaxy where courage and unity could make a difference. Commander Vareth approached quietly. "Lyra, Jaren," he said, "I want to commend both of you. You have not only protected Zarathus, but you have also forged a bond that will guide our people for generations." Lyra rose and nodded. "Thank you, Commander." But it was more than just strength. It was strategy, courage, and trust, and it was Captain Jaren who taught us that. Jaren shook his head. "I only shared what I knew. The real credit goes to your people. Zarathians are strong, brave, and capable. I only helped guide you to see what was possible." Lyra smiled. "Then together we are unstoppable." The following days were filled with recovery and rebuilding. The people of Zarathus repaired their cities, tended to the wounded, and celebrated their survival. Jaren remained with them, teaching more human strategies, sharing insights, and helping Lyra train a new generation of warriors. The bond between humans and Zarathians grew stronger with each passing day. Lyra reflected on her journey. She had begun with skepticism, pride, and disbelief. She had thought humans were mere myths, stories to inspire or scare. Yet now, standing amidst her people, she understood the truth. Humans were real. They were capable of greatness. They were a reminder that courage, ingenuity, and determination could overcome even the most impossible odds. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the crystal towers, Lyra and Jaren stood atop a ridge overlooking the city. The air was calm, the winds gentle, and the stars twinkled like diamonds in the vast sky. "Do you ever regret coming here?" Lyra asked, breaking the silence. Jaren shook his head. "Never. I came to help, and I found something far more valuable. Friends, allies, and the proof that courage knows no bounds." Lyra nodded, smiling. "You've changed my world. And my people. We will never forget what you did." Jaren placed a hand on her shoulder. "And you've reminded me that legends are not just stories, they are choices. Every act of bravery, every decision to stand and fight creates a legend. You, Lyra, have done that today and every day of your life." Lyra looked out at the city below, alive with activity and laughter once more. The aliens had been defeated, the fleet scattered, and her people were safe. But more importantly, she had learned a vital lesson. Legends are real when courage, strength, and ingenuity come together, regardless of where they come from. As she watched the moons rise higher in the sky, Lyra felt hope swell in her chest. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown challenges and wonders, but she was no longer afraid. Humans had proven that bravery and skill could change the course of events, and together, they could face anything. The night was peaceful, but it carried the promise of adventure, discovery, and unity. Lyra knew that this was only the beginning, not just for Zarathus, but for the bond between worlds, species, and warriors. Humans were no longer legends in her eyes. They were real. And now, standing beside them, she was ready to face whatever came next. Lyra turned to Jaren, her eyes bright with determination. "Tomorrow we train again. We prepare for the future. For my people, for yours, and for the galaxy. Jaren smiled. Tomorrow and every day after. Legends are made every day, Lyra. Let's make sure we keep creating them. As the two warriors stood together, gazing at the stars above, Lyra felt a sense of completion. She had learned the truth about courage, strength, and humanity. She had seen legends walk among her, and she knew that together, humans and Zorathians could face any challenge, survive any threat, and inspire generations to come. The galaxy was vast. But now she was ready.